Hi guys, and welcome back to the Academy of Historical Defence, and I'm Nick Thomas, and bringing you HEMA at home, looking at British military swordsmanship with the broadsword, sabre and spadroon. Now, on one of the recent videos I showed an antique, a light cavalry sabre being used and some of the techniques of using it. People seem to really like that, so I'm going to do a little bit more with antiques. I don't tend to use my antiques for too much drilling because I don't want to put too much wear on them, although some are tougher than others, like this NCO spadroon is nice and robust with a nice copper grip. So in terms of your antiques, do some drills with them, sure, but try not to wear them down too much, and always remember that a lot of them are sharp and pointy. So if you're learning or doing anything that's going to tire you, they can get pretty dangerous. So use some caution when using antiques for anything, and don't damage them, obviously. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to go through with some original swords with this. Now, today's lesson is on parades. Now, parade comes from the French term parry, and of course, as everyone who's into swordsmanship knows, parry also came into the English language to mean to stop an attack. But in the case of Roworth using the term parade, what it means is a rotational defensive action, and it doesn't have to necessarily be to stop an attack. It can be to basically tactically improve your situation, and that'll become clear as I show you why. Now, it is said it's a circular action, so technically speaking, going from inside guard to half circle guard would be a parade, or it would be a half parade, but they usually break down to round parades and circle parades. And the way they're being used is, initially, it's not so much for stopping an attack, but tactically improving your situation. So remember when I've talked about the lines, covering of the lines and your defensive postures in Roworth, it's always about being in a strong position and being opposed to your opponent's blade, which means you are defended against them on that line. So that if you are my opponent and I'm in the outside guard, your blade should be this side. And if you change to the inside, I should be changing to my inside. And that's a base principle of this system. So the sword doesn't drop down into a position where it's not defending us. It doesn't go up into some position which threatens only through an attack. It covers the lines. So the opponent is this side of the blade. We are this side with the edge facing them, with the war dine or knuckle bow facing them. They move to this side, we move over. And the same can be done with the two hanging guards, depending which side you go. That is the base principle. And to ensure that we maintain that, we have to move and adjust with what our opponent does. So one obvious way when somebody moves to our outside from our inside is to just move over. They come to our inside, move back to the other side, and that's fine. That's one way of doing it. The other way, or another way of doing this, is using parades. Now, the round parade is the small one. So imagine just making a small circle like this. So it's going to look like a disengage, but we're not calling it a disengage in this regard because we're not changing from one line to the other for them. We are responding to what they're doing. So when they're on our outside here and they disengage, usually to launch an attack, we are going to follow them and come back to our start position. So they started on our outside, they moved to our inside, we do a circular action which goes around their blade and brings them right back to where they were. So tactically it resets the position that you were both in. So that's a simple way to follow them as they disengage in you and maintain the position that you're in. And there are lots of reasons you might want to do that. Personally, because I prefer fighting in outside to inside. Inside has its place, it's a good guard, but I much prefer outside as a general guard position. So I'm a big fan of just making this circular action, maintaining my outside guard position. Okay, so that is a round parade. Now, the circle parade is the same thing, but bigger. So the circle parade is about 3 feet, roughly a meter, and you just make a big circular action like this. And notice that it's out in front of us like this. Big action. Try not to bend too much at the elbow or the shoulder. It should be entirely from a wrist. And you can, of course, start bringing it more so that it's almost becoming what would later be called a moulinet. But the parade is not an attack. It's about reacquiring your opponent's blade. So the idea you see in rapier as well of finding the blade, gaining the sword, these kind of terms come in. And it is about maintaining a strong defensive position where our true edge, our war iron, opposes the opponent's blade. Roworth also says of the circle parade that it's really good when you are fighting at night, because of course harder to see, attacks could be coming in that you're not seeing, so we can use this circular action essentially as a net to catch whatever might be coming in at us. Not necessarily attacks, remember, but just finding the opponent's blade, so we reacquire it, if you like. You want to know where the opponent's blade is, and you want to be covering it at all times, unless you've got a very specific reason not to. And he also says that it's very good against people who will try and confuse you with a flurry of attacks, or flurry of feints, I think is actually what he says. And you will have met those kind of people, I'm sure, if you've done much sparring, where they'll just do feint, feint, feint. They'll try and bamboozle you with a flurry of feints or possibly attacks as well. And yeah, against those kind of people, you can keep your blade in motion, even in a slow circle, and it means that, yeah, you're basically a catch-all net wherever they're coming in, and you can do it on either inside or outside line. So you're, you know, big circular action. So the circle parade is about sort of catching the opponent's blade, covering you, you know, across all the angles. The round parade is very much following the opponent's blade around in a disengaged style format, and it should be a smaller range of motion as you possibly can. So with this one, it'd usually just be this here. Really small amount of movement to reacquire the blade on the line that you started on. So there you have it. Round parades, circle parades, and remember that when we talk about parades in Roworth, think of it like a parry. And it can be done, yeah, in these circular motions using the round and circle parade. Technically speaking, you could do, of course, do something more like a moulinet to acquire a blade like this, which is very much like some of the recoveries that you do in Roworth. You could do that as well, but the idea is that you're staying in front and controlling where the opponent's blade is, either by small round parades or larger circular parades. And yeah, it's all about maintaining and controlling your defensive strategy all the way through the fight. In terms of which direction you go, personally, I've always gone both clockwise in both of them. That's me personally. It's the way I like to do it. And I use them a lot more from the outside guard than the inside guard. Again, that's very much personal preference, because that's what I like to do. So there you go, round parades and circle parades. And you know, if you want to just practice them at home, well, it's really nice and simple. Get a sword or sword-like object, stand there and do small circles and do large circles. And then you can practice doing one. So you could do, for example, a round parade and lunge. So that would simulate a situation where we were on the outside guard, they disengaged, we used a round parade to reset our position, and then immediately went in for an attack. And that is actually a very good strategy for launching a thrust, because, you know, they're completely confused. They're expecting to come in here to the inside, and yet they're going to get hit on the outside. So from here, you can just practice, rotate around, and immediately launch your thrust, or lunge in that case. Round and circle parades. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you're enjoying this series. I'm going to keep going and get through plenty of Roworth, and I'll do some partnered exercises as well, and show how they can be adapted for solo training too. So we are getting through Roworth at a good rate. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already.